everybody. This is the Red Ladder panel session. I am Siki Giunta, I'm Executive Vice President at HCLTech, and I am surrounded by incredible leaders. Today we are talking about diversity and what would we give to the women of the future as guides and suggestions and experience, so that we can create a better, more comprehensive working environment. So let's start with Michelle. Michelle, tell us a little bit about you and what you do every day. What's your passion?
Sure. Michelle Cutting. I'm the Vice President of Global Device Operations at Medidata. We deliver patient and site devices for use in clinical research trials around the globe.
So cool. Kira, what about you?
Hi, Kira Baca. I'm the Chief Revenue Officer at Ateliere Creative Technologies. We have a SaaS cloud native supply chain solutions geared towards the media and entertainment industry.
Oh, very interesting. Aimee, what about you?
Sure. Hi, everyone. So I'm Aimee Catalano. I lead global partner marketing for Google Cloud. And in this role, we think about how do we go to market across Google Cloud products and across all the different partnership types. So I sit on our CMO leadership team, really thinking about how to get partners in everything we do across the go-to-market function.
Nice meeting you. Anubha.
Hi, my name is Anubha Gaur, and I am an Executive Director in Quest Diagnostics, and I am leading the team of Cloud Transformations, DevSecOps, the platform engineering team. And Quest Diagnostics, I'm sure you have gone through for your lab work. So we are in the diagnostic lab testing, and that's a very promising, industry in terms of it helps to diagnose the healthcare. So most of that, when you know what's going on, you go for the diagnostic. And in terms of the passion, and this is I love to coach and mentor the women who are the early career, and then show them and help them in the engineering field. That's one of my passion.
What about you, Cindy?
Hi, good morning. I'm Cindy Donovan. I am the Chief Information Officer at Monro Automotive Service and Tire. We are a 1,300 retail chain of service, maintenance, tires, and our job is to take care of each and every customer's vehicles to ensure they are maintained, repaired, and utmost safe as each and every one of us are driving our lives forward. So it's been a great opportunity and honor to be here driving a digital journey, which is both stabilizing and bringing technology to the forefront in business enablement, and stepping into some really cool uses of tech to deliver the repair experience for our customers and our teammates.
Thank you very much. So I'm going to start with the setup framing questions, and what I really would like to know is why women are important in leadership. And it is a bit of a dark question, but you will be surprised how we all think it in a different way. So it's important for our audience to understand why each one is important to you, and what does make a difference on your point of view. But Cindy, if you want to give us your point of view, that's important. Thank you.
Sure, absolutely. I would say from a point of view on women in leadership and the importance of that, certainly multifaceted. And I think some examples would be we bring to the table, I think, a natural attention to cultivating relationships, and I think that's a huge part of it. A nurturing approach to get to business outcomes and results, and I think that is an important aspect as we collaborate together, and it's an invaluable asset. And I think that is needed for that balanced view and approach. I think the another aspect of it, when we look at the consumer base out there, I believe women make up at least 75% of the consumer base. And so we bring that perspective to the table as well as we look to continue to advance the products and services we deliver and sell every day. So I would say those are a couple points, but certainly that positive, nurturing, collaborative approach to create business outcomes, I think is absolutely key.
Very important. And yet we buy more than the other side of the world.
I think I make up a large part of that.
Yes. Anubha.
So I agree with Cindy, what she's talking about. Women are giving a different perspective, different skill set, nurturing, the caring, and then bringing the fairness that drives the trust within the organization. So I want to share that 20 years back when I started as an engineer, most of the peer and the leadership were men. And if I look at it after 22 years, the picture is pretty much same, not changed yet. The challenge, if you can see, where is the data points during the pandemic time, I'm sure you must have noticed the countries that had women within the leadership who were led by the women had the lower death rate, and they performed and handled this situation well compared to the other countries. So that clearly shows that now is the time then we should bring more leaders in the leadership role, because when we have the more leaders in the leadership, they are going to bring and then mentor the more junior and then college students who are going through with the same challenge and then experience. So it's important for having the women leadership, because only 15% approximately in the Fortune 500 companies led by women. It is a problem. So yes, absolutely. The more leaders we have, we are going to build more women in the leadership role. Yes.
Where all of us, I feel, have a pretty strong grasp on why the diversity of thought and perspective that women bring to any table, to a team table, a leadership table, a boardroom, really drives a more successful result. And we're not making that up. The research, you can look at McKinsey studies and other studies that actually show that bottom line is stronger when you have women at the table. And one of the things that I think is important is, there's a bunch of people who might feel like this is something we should do because we know it's better. I know that to the point of like when you're younger in career and you show up and you have these aspirations to become an executive one day, but you see no executives up there, it's a little bit hard to see your path. And so we all know these types of reasons. For what it's worth, I do feel that not everybody might not necessarily see it through that lens, but that doesn't mean you can't take research to get what we need to move this forward. So one example, I joined a company pre-IPO. We went public shortly thereafter, so it was growing really fast. And it was just 100% men. Like, we really did need to get a DEI organization off the ground. And so taking actually data and research to the board and saying, hey, we should invest in this function, like a diversity and inclusion initiative at this company. Here are the business result reasons why this is the right business choice. So sometimes we have to do it and it's the right thing, whether you feel it's because it helps women overall or because you want a more successful company.
It's good for business.
Good for business, correct.
Kira.
Yeah, thank you. I think you have all articulated, Siki, to your point, everyone comes at it from a different point of view. And I think you've all articulated things I've thought, but I think you articulated them even better than I could have. And Cindy, I just want to maybe just jump on to what you said about, we nurture relationships just naturally. I think that then when you look at the success, Aimee, as you said, having those different voices in the room, why that's so important, and how we cultivate that, because we do nurture those relationships, that we are, we're bringing more people to the table with different perspectives. I'd like to think that, just as leaders, that becomes really important. I know that for myself and the teams that I've either been a part of or led, I enjoy success as a team more than success as an individual. And I think that is a bit inherent to, my being a mother, my being a woman, and those things sort of come more naturally perhaps to women, and certainly in leadership positions. I find that the women that I've either worked with or worked for have also nurtured those just collaborative relationships. And then as customers, right? In my business, almost all of my customers, which is not a consumer-facing business, are men, and are men in leadership positions. So, to the original question, why is it important to have women in these leadership positions? It's, I want to see more. I don't want to be the only woman in the room, and I think, Anubha, as you said, a lot of that hasn't changed. So we have to think about what else we can do so that, you aren't the only woman on the board, or you aren't the only woman in that room or on that panel, which tends to happen a lot still. But I think, having these conversations, and like I said, the data can change what we do going forward. So I appreciate all of those points of view that you've all brought up, and I stand behind them all with almost nothing new to say.
Thank you, Kira. Michelle?
Yeah, same. I mean, I think we get to the last person in the group, and everybody has absolutely said many of the things that I myself have been thinking. At the end of the day, right, we know it's important that we are in these leadership roles and that we help bring other women into these leadership roles. It changes the table that you're sitting around when you've got that broader perspective, when you've got people with just naturally different traits to added into the room. That's really where change happens, where new ideas come from. It's so important for us as women to be able to do that and to bring these other women into leadership to really move forward, right? To grow our organizations, to grow each other. And a lot of that can be done through this.
Thank you. And my opinion is, we are 50% of the population, so at least we have to contribute there. And over the time, when I started working, empathy was a weakness. And actually, over the time, we realized that, empathy and connections and it's important and vital for the business. And I think I personally believe that there is a quotient bigger in female of empathy than our male counterpart. I know a lot of very empathic and incredible men, but there is something that sometimes it's hard for them to take it out. Now let's switch and talk about tech, because we are all in tech. So I've been a CEO 3 times, and I was always the only and the first female CEO of my VCs. And it is changing a little bit, but I always ask myself, how can tech change? Because tech is, harder than other industry. So let's start with Michelle. What do you think? How can tech change and get more? And then we go to practical things, but there has to be 1 or 2 things that we can do so that, women leadership in tech can advance faster than, the last 30 years.
Yeah, I mean, it's a great point, right? And it is something that really needs to be changed. And so my thought around how can we help to close this gap? How can we bring more women up the ranks in tech, get more women involved, get them interested. I think part of it is by doing stuff like we're doing today, by being the voice for some of these women that need that voice, so they can see that person up there and feel confident that, hey, I can do that too. I think that's huge. And I think it's huge for all of us to be here today and to be able to represent that. I think it allows us to make great strides forward. The other part of it to me is really just a focus and transparency, right? It's admitting that there's an issue, acknowledging that this is a problem, and bringing it to the forefront to give it to this visibility that it deserves, and working with your company, your executives, other companies and their executives to help make it a focus in hiring processes, promotional opportunities. You have to be thoughtful about it if we're going to be able to make a change at a much better rate than it has been.
Absolutely. We have to think about it every day. And and think and do every day. I think that's a good concept. Kira.
Yeah, I'm actually in a position right now where I'm trying to grow my team, and I work primarily in sales. Although, as a leader in a growing startup, obviously we play lots of roles. But in just growing my own sales team in tech, I can tell you that it has been very frustrating what submissions I'm getting for resumes. It's such a sales and tech is so heavily dominated by men that I'm finding it hard to get good candidates to the table. So that's something that's hitting very close to home right now. And to the extent that I'm not willing to hire the role until I have enough participation. So it's reaching out to it's actually saying to the recruiters that are contacting me, here's these great submissions. I'm like, come back to me when you have some diversity in this list, right? And asking them to actually go into the world and look a little harder. Obviously networking on LinkedIn and at conferences and trying to really say, come to the tables, apply for this job. But that just shows that, in this particular role that it's been, and I think it's because sales is, it's aggressive, coffee is for closers. And we have such a view of what a salesperson is. And then on the flip side, my successes have been because I built partnerships. I built trust. I believe in passion. I sell passionately. I stand behind the technology and the team that built it. And that's what I put forth into the world, which I think once again is sort of that different perspective of how to do the job. But it is very hard to find candidates. You always want to hire the best, right? Well, what if the best is always men? And so I'm sort of conflicted in the candidates that I get, but it's my responsibility to push the bar to make sure that I get enough candidates of diversity, gender, race, religion, identity. All of these things we have to push the bar and not accept just the 10 best resumes that showed up in my inbox and they're all men. In my background, when I think of anyone I would want to hire before, unfortunately, they all come back to I worked with that guy, he was awesome, so I'm trying to change what might be an easy hire into what is the right hire, and start to demand more from the other people in my community to bring to more diversity to the table. So how do we change it? I think we have to expect to see more, and we have to demand that we see more, and we have to be open as organizations to wait longer to find that candidate that regardless of gender is the right one, but what comes to the table is more diversity so that you can really choose the right person for the job, but it's not just the first 10, what do they call it? Pale Yale, male pale from Yale or something. That tends to be what shows up on my desk. So
I always think about the hard technology roles where we don't find, but it's good perspective for sales. I haven't thought about it, but yeah, it might be hard as well in a sales technology sales.
Honestly, even if you like Google sales leaders in tech, every speaker that you're going to find on YouTube, every motivational sales speaker it has a very similar voice. They're all highly aggressive, motivationally speaking, men, and that also is not going to attract women to this, to this field and to this area. It's a very different approach.
Yeah. What about Aimee?
I can layer on to Kira's comments, and also feeling very proud that our CRO of our very large Google Cloud company is a female, as is our CMO, my manager. So it's great that there's definitely advancements that have been made in this area. But to layer on to Kira's point, I have managed hundreds of people over 25 years, and it is fascinating. If you look at the job description, you were saying you do a job description, you're trying to get candidates. Men will look at it and say, oh, I've done like 20% of that, I'm qualified and would apply. Women tend to look at it and say, oh, but I haven't done that 10%, so I must not, it says minimum qualifications, I don't have that, and then they don't. So, and by the way, this is across the board, and it's not just for hiring. I would say it's also for promotions internally, where how quick you see men to raise their hand to say, oh, that job just opened there, I'm 20% qualified, let me in. And so this is, to your point, there's two things here. I 1,000,000% agree with you. How are we more proactive in encouraging women to raise their hand and stretch themselves, even if by paper it looks like you're only a percent qualified to get to a certain role? And I've always coached people. I actually think the best new role, whether it's a new company or within a company, is, you bring a percent to the role that you will crush. And it's completely fine that there's a percent that you're flexing into new territory and you're learning and growing. That's why we want to take that role anyway. So how are we encouraging more women to lean in on those roles? The second thing, and I could literally talk all day on the tactics that we could use, but it's really important on how we craft job descriptions, because you'd be surprised that we've done a lot of research at Google, and you can tell where underrepresented groups overall are less likely to apply on the way things are phrased, the length. There's like all this scientific algorithms that will show you. So, for us, we've been able to crack the nut on what that looks like. And so every single job description goes through like a test, so to speak, to make sure that you will get the highest amount of diversity in applications. And so it's worth it up front to research what do job descriptions need to look like to increase that level of women and others applying. Again, I could talk all day, but I know we have a lot of questions, but I'll pass it on.
Anubha, what's your point of view?
So I want to say that what Aimee and Kira was telling, that absolutely there are the two aspects, not only but the main two dimensions what Aimee you highlighted is the research on the job descriptions. Most of the companies, when they are putting the job descriptions, is as catered towards is the one populations. They're highlighting this and this, but core capabilities, empathy, compassion, and these are all these stuffs is important, equally important, and have the weighted criteria. And when you're evaluating a candidate, that something is missing in the job description. So yes, do the research, understand the job description is. And second thing is coming back to the first question when you're asking why women should be in the leadership role. This is another reason: attract the talent. Because when they are on the leadership, the women who are in the leadership role for that company has a huge responsibility to attract and then find the good talents, and then sharing how the leaders are growing in that company. So that is the important thing that we should because sometimes you are right, Aimee, during it's a promotion, so whether it's other criteria, they start self-doubting, and that's it is a challenge. So two areas: women who is in the leadership role for that company should go outside, attract the talents. It's a huge responsibility. Second is do the research, how you are posting the job descriptions. Is it catered towards one populations only?
Can I add one little piece that is critical to layer on to what you said, which is I feel like sometimes people don't put enough thought in the interview panel. It's one thing to get them in the door. It's another thing to close them. And so if you do all that work and you find great people to bring in, if they show up and it's an entirely male interview panel or any dynamic that you realize, like, that's part of your strategy. Like, think about who's on that interview panel.
Yeah, and very well said, Aimee. 100% agree, because I have seen personally when the interview panel, when all male, and especially during, as I said, tech is the area which is a tough one to crack, because most of the interview panel are male, and then it's a cognitive biases comes into the picture. They start judging that maybe may not be able to do that. So yes, look at your interview panel.
Awesome. Cindy.
All right. Great points. So I'm just going to add a couple bits to this, and then one other different aspect of it. So when I think of, our tech sector, certainly, love the comments that have been made around the interviewing and getting candidates, and that the responsibility we have as women leaders. And so loved it, Kira, too, how you've described how you're all over that and focused on the diversity in your hiring process. I'm super proud with the leadership team I have right now of 4 individuals, where I have 2 phenomenal women on my leadership team, 2 phenomenal men. And I think the 5 of us bring all different aspects to our leadership table that I just am so excited to show up every day to get to sit around that table. And it took time to build it, and it took time to get the right people around that table. And it's certainly the aspects you've touched around, the technical competencies, the cultural fit is just as important as the technical competencies, and what are we trying to build as a culture. So, I think that's important. A different angle I'll add into this too is, what can we do with young women, young girls in their careers, and how are we promoting and supporting STEM? At the young women, girls level, in schools, in after school programs, in the committees we sit on. Girl Geek, as an example, is just an incredible forum for growing women leaders in the tech field. Again, and then that STEM, I'll just make one shout out that I couldn't be prouder. I have a daughter that's just about done with her elementary education degree in STEM as her focus, right? And just start there and get girls confident in science, technology, engineering, and math. Right at the very beginning, and start to break down some of those biases that could grow up when we're young girls. So I think that's a part of it too, to complement all the other incredible things that have been said about, getting the right talent to the table. It starts early on.
That's it. I 100% with you. We lose women in technology around the 14 years old. Mm-hmm. That's the moment where maths is too hard, and bio is too hard, and chem is too hard, and I say to them, that's not, you live with your cell phone in your hand 90% of the time. That's technology, and you can't tell me that that's too hard. It's just sometimes we just lacked that age to not ask the hard questions.
I was just thinking, I have a 16-year-old, so I'm just trying to think of, she's academically inclined, but probably not going to go into a science or engineering role. But I was just trying to think about maybe some of the attributes that would lose someone around that age. And I wonder if it's more socially based as well. So mm-hmm. in schools, if you had programs that were like, more geared towards clubs for girls, and because I think that once again, if you think about that, the part, that empathetic leadership that we were talking about, that we like to bring people together. Well, I wonder if you put more of an emphasis on those skill sets and those learnings in more of a team environment, that you might attract more girls and keep them more interested, because perhaps most girls are more social, and you get more of your, for not always great reasons, you get validation in groups, right? And so you think about a teenage girl who's looking for a lot of validation, we might find that programs that make these math and sciences more social might be something that can hold that group longer and keep them more engaged. Just popped into my head thinking about my own teenager. What might make her want to be part of a math group would probably be if she had some really good friends that were in the math group, So
and Cindy, you just talked about your daughter and STEM,
Mm-hmm.
what practical thing that made her, tick there that we can share, and then we can all look into somebody.
I would add in this particular instance, she certainly had a love for math, and she was really good at math and had just such a propensity with little children and that nurturing, and just gravitated towards young children. So I think that just resulted in a combination that she wanted to be an elementary school teacher and stayed with that math and that building that critical thinking, and also the reward you can see immediately when you're teaching a small child on math, and like even fractions, and a pizza, and if you cut it into 4 slices and that's quarters, and like just that connection of math and engineering that can be built at the early age, and seeing that excitement of a child connecting to understanding. So she gravitated towards that, because I think you could just see the excitement of that child that just learned some mathematical components, but they don't even realize it. They're going to find skills.
What do you think it's practical term? I didn't want to cut you off, Cindy. But I love the fact that you have to stimulate what it makes them tick, really.
So from the practical terms, right, we whether it's a tech is tough to crack, no doubt about it. But in any organizations, yes, the hiring, look at the more attract the talents. That's the important part, because that is actually going to strong the pipeline. And then the other stuff is, and have a women on the seat in the table. And when I say seat on the table is not enough, they should be the driver. They should be the head of the table. And that's where it's the important part, because that is how it's bringing the whole empowerment from the bottom, strong pipeline, and then they have, the women who is driving, who is the head of the table. The other thing that, I've seen women empowerment club in the organizations wherein only women is leading, but it's important to bring the men. Maybe they should be the leader of the women empowerment. So that's only they can actually understand the challenges women are going through. And it should not be only for women. Women empowerment should not be for women. It should be bring the men and train them. Break the cognitive biases. That's the important part.
Absolutely. What about Michelle? What's your, in practical term, what we can do as an organization?
So my thought around this, when we think about practical steps, I think we've talked a lot about getting the folks in there. My thought is then, once we have them, how do we continue to support them, empower them in that environment? And with my organization today, that's actually a huge focus for us. So some of the practical steps that we take is, our leader of our particular area, he is a male, but he goes out of his way to be a part of these groups, just like you had just mentioned, to help lead these groups, to be the executive sponsor and understand what this means to the women. And as a part of that, we publish women leadership percentages in our divisions, in our areas, and we talk about it, right? What can we do? So from a practical step, that actual putting those percentages up there, putting those numbers up there, and helping everybody drive towards better ones, I think really helps. Additionally, again, thinking about the folks when they're there, and how do we keep bringing them up through the organization, and taking maybe a junior associate and turning them into a woman leader. we have a lot of focus groups specifically for that. So kind of, Kira, to what you were saying about making things more social, even in the workplace, we've got more of here's a coffee group where various women and leaders meet for folks that, allows that. And then you build those friendships and everybody works together to come up with these plans to be able to, pull folks forward and keep them engaged.
Absolutely. I think accountability, it's a tough thing for a company to do, but until you do the maths, the number, you just, it's just a feeling and it's not a reality. When you just start with percentage and, how many of this there are there, I think it becomes everybody's challenge. It's not just the single leader. When everybody says, "Oh, there are only 6 female in there, 130 leaders," but that's a big statistics. And it's not just one person; it's everybody. And I think accountability is very important. Aimee, what's your point of view?
Yeah, so to layer on Michelle's point, where it's one thing to get them in the door, and then there's another thing to keep them and progress them so they see a career path within the company and stay. This is another area where just being super, super proactive. And when I say that, it's not just at the overall people leadership and manager level, but across the board. Things like mandatory unconscious bias training. Like, how are we lifting awareness? And it's not just the women who opt in because I want to go to an ERG and learn more about it. It's actually the other people across the organization. Like, you want the women to feel accepted, and any underrepresented group, like, you really want them to be a part of a company that they are excited about and they feel it's an inclusive environment. And to do that, it is mandatory trainings across the board to just lift that awareness. I also feel like these special programs, like a women leadership development, huge fan of those, where you take women who are probably like one step before hitting an executive level, and how do you create, like, what is the right program that sets up the right mentorship, that gives them a forum, because they're all in the same place, to meet with women who have crossed that bridge. These are the things I need to think about. This is how I need to engage. There's a double benefit here where you're nurturing the talent to get to the next level. So there are more women in the bigger seats, but then you're also making women feel like they are investing in me as an individual and my personal development. Therefore, I should stay here versus go to where people think the grass might be greener. So there's a lot of reasons on how we can do that. So again, it's being proactive on every level.
Unconscious bias is such an important concept. I had a very active conversations with a colleague that said, "I don't have any bias." And I said, "That's not true. We are born with bias, and that's why they are unconscious. And by the way, they're not fault, it's just habits." And to say I have no bias, even the most religious people have bias.
I've caught myself on doing like an age bias on seeing somebody that looked really young in career and assuming like, oh, they must not have a lot of depth in this area. And it blew my mind. This was only a couple of years ago after, decades of advocating for women. And yeah, it's there. So it's just, you have to be aware of it and understand it. And then how do you address it? As much as there is nobody who has zero. I completely agree with you, Siki.
And it's not a stigma. It's a fact of life. And the first thing is to acknowledge and then work on it. But such a great concept.
I was just gonna say on that unconscious bias, this is something it's in our language too, right? It's not even, it's things like saying, "Hey guys, hey guys, what do we think about that?" And I'm constantly trying to change some of the language I grew up with that makes, a team have a male perspective. There's so many times that our language is influencing that unconscious bias that that we have to start to break down. And I'm trying to say things like team more instead of guys, and it's perhaps my generation, but it's that growing up with these very when we look at a team in business, we tend to put a male spin on it, even in our language. So I think it's breaking down all of those things as well, and recognizing them, that even as advocates, passionate advocates for women in business and women in tech and women in life, we still do things that are that unconscious bias, even as women who are here to champion forward, I still fail on some of those basic biases. So it's something to constantly remind myself and those around me to change the way I think and the language that I use.
First of all, is accepting it, and second, do something about it.
Yeah, acknowledgement is the first step to change.
Yes.
Yeah.
So, Cindy, my favorite topics, and I hope that I live with every day, but mentoring, to me, it is one single tool that we have to make a little bit of a nudge in diversity and inclusion and everything. So what do you think is the best way to mentor, in your point of view?
The best. I think I have to give two answers. That's okay. I mean, I think there's absolutely purposeful mentoring programs, cultivating that, that as a program with purpose, objectives, identifying and lifting up women, needing mentoring, and making sure that you've got mentors who are the right fit. And that we as mentors, we know what our responsibilities are and what our objectives are, just as much as that mentee is coming in with some set of needs, and then get it started. It's not going to be perfect, and start making those matches and get it started. So I think there's huge benefits in formal mentoring, and I think then there's the aspect of we as women leaders, we are informally mentoring every day. Yeah. And so that's a reminder for us as women leaders to know how we show up, how we handle a conversation, how we take a crucial conversation on, how we celebrate a team success, how we champion the team. I think that we are doing that and need to do that every day. And that I think is super impactful as well. And when people ask me, hey, who are your best mentors in your career? I often look back and I'm naming people that maybe weren't a formal mentoring relationship. And I say, Bruce, my CIO at that company, I learned so much from him because of the following reasons, or I learned so much from her for the following reasons. And that is just as important. And we also know that informal, we learn from great experiences we observe and we are a part of. And we also learn from maybe some experiences aren't so great, and that we continue to mold and create ourselves in the image of what we want to be and don't want to be. So that's some of my thoughts on mentoring, where I think it's absolutely important to have the formal programs in place, is us recognizing we do it informally all day long.
That's very important. Michelle, what about your suggestions? And mentoring is sometimes work.
I echo a lot of what Cindy had said, both on the formal and the informal. But you make a great point too. It is work. I mean, it requires, just like unconscious bias requires us to think and be aware of it, mentoring requires a lot of work on the formal side to really be thoughtful in the approaches. And like Cindy had said, we got to know what the outcomes are. We need to be aligned, both as the mentor and making sure the mentee aligns. There's a lot that from an individual, and it's a very personal experience for folks. And it's very important that alignment is there. And through that, it's things like even teaching people to say, hey, this isn't working because of X, Y, Z. making it an open, comfortable environment for the mentorships is something that I've always found to be very important, sort of setting that stage from the beginning. I think, and I think it agrees with what Cindy had said, is that the informal mentorship is where I personally have also gotten a lot of unsolicited knowledge, right? Unexpected information, gained skills that I didn't know I was seeking to gain at that time. But when I look back, I can see how it was so important to me and how it helped me grow throughout my leadership career as well. I think it's important for me, is something I think about all the time. It is, how are other people seeing me? You know, I know there's the cliche phrase of, lead by example, but it really does matter, especially, when you look at the people in the room, whether they're men or women. I want them to be able to look up to that, to me, to that role, to say, I learned something, I want to emulate that behavior, or I want to do this or do that. Not saying it's perfect, but just keeping it in mind, right? And being thoughtful about that, and that people are looking to you as a leader and hoping to learn something informally too.
So important, perfection is impossible, but there's only one face in front of the mirror every day. And as far as you like it every day, that's good achievement. Not always perfect, but good achievement.
Yeah.
Kira.
I think mentorship has played the biggest role from the beginning of my career, but to Cindy and Michelle's point, a lot of it was unsolicited mentorship that I benefited from. But even to the extent that some of it, like my very first job in my sort of very young adult life out of school was working at Paramount Studios. I walked on the lot, said, I'll work for free, hire me if you like me after a while. And Sherry Lansing was the president of Paramount at the time. And she was the only woman that was a president or any executive in the entertainment industry. And I looked up to her. I would see her in her office from afar as I would deliver the mail, and just that visual was maybe the first inspiration I had that I was going to lead a studio someday. Now, I don't want to lead a studio now, but I do like to lead businesses. But it was the first almost like unknown mentorship that I studied everything about her. And so that was a really powerful woman that put me on a path. And then I worked with other women, and very few, but a few women in my young career were my inspirations, and where they worked with me was really, they gave me that leadership. And then I actually, for the first time in my professional career, have a mentor, a wonderful woman who she has a foundation. She places women on boards. She mentors executive women to go even greater. And it's the first time, I've led businesses through acquisitions, through major growth periods. I'm very proud of that career. I now am sort of, maybe not in the later stages of my career, but I'm certainly not in the early stages. I now have an actual official mentor, and that role has become so important to me as I need some place to bounce ideas, feel safe. And so that role of mentorship, I think, never goes away, right? We have to give it, but we might also need it too, still, whether that's in friendships or a formalized mentor relationship. But it's also to the point of time. I think what holds me back maybe from being a better mentor is time, right? It's like making that important. It was important to me when I was, coming up in my career. I have to make time to make it important to do that for someone else, whether that's formalized or informal, but making sure that I carve the time out to do that is hard. But this conversation is a good reminder to me that I could probably do more. So I think I'll walk away from this making sure that I do put more effort in. I think I know I'm a leader to the women in the companies that I've worked with. I know that I've been recognized for that, but I don't know that I do it enough, and I don't in the formalized mentorship.
Absolutely. Aimee.
So 2 quick things. I'd say one, some of the best, to the point on the informal mentors, a lot of it comes from organic continuation of a formal mentorship program. And I feel like to help make those relationships really foster, it's worth the upfront 10-minute training on both sides. As a mentor, these are your expectations. As a mentee, because what I have found is when mentees really embrace reverse mentoring, the relationship is really supportive and fruitful for both sides, and then those tend to continue on. So I do feel like the ones that you understand how to make this like relationship grow and how do we give them tips and tricks to do that, spend that 10 minutes in doing that. And then something that Kira said that sparked a thought is I remember being at getting my MBA at Santa Clara, and there was like this Intel executive, woman of 3, totally inspired me. Like, oh, you can have it all. You can have this family. You can do that. And to the point of we are all so busy. And I encourage every manager, even at any level, if a university or an opportunity like this, if somebody comes up to you and we're like 2 weeks away from our huge conference, you never say no. It's like these are the things that really matter because we are helping shape the next generation of women and anyone, frankly, entering, and it's worth it. So we need to make the time in our lives to say yes to this. And just when you're not sure, just remember how that one person inspired you, and then it becomes easy to make the time. So that's all.
You know, that's so important because the big advice I give on mentorship is ask. Sometimes it's, we have a busy life and we do this and we give, but somebody needs a little bit more structure. Just ask, because if we don't know, we can't have. That's why programs are good, because people that doesn't know to go to the CEO of Paramount and say, I really want to have 5 minutes of your time. They don't, but the program will allow that. But just ask, raise your hand. And on the other side, I just say, don't take too much. Because, sprinkling mentoring, I don't think it works. I know exactly when my box is full, and I'd rather say, I have a great friend that can do the job. Now I have got this deadline, I got 3 others and everything, but just ask and then on the other side, commit. Now we're gonna go fast. One advice that you would go, I'd like to close with that, very simple, that you would give to a young female that needs to grow. We start with Kira.
Since we're going fast, I could go on for this one for a while. I think I know it's been said a bunch, but being authentic, I think at this stage in women's lives and careers, we can be more ourselves than we ever could in the past. I think the Barbie movie has an amazing quote about how women have to be, funny, but not too funny, and, forward, but not too forward. But we've had to fit in this box to get certain places throughout our career. And I don't think that we have to do that anymore. So my advice to women coming up is know what your worth is and hold on to it strong, and don't sacrifice it. Be yourself. Be assertive, or be funny, or be goofy, or be stick your foot in your mouth like I do all the time. It makes me who I am. I don't even try to do it, and I just do it. So I think we're at a stage where we can be more ourselves and we don't have to sacrifice it. So I think owning who you are is really important to your career and being proud of it.
Michelle.
Yeah, quickly. So I think for me, if I was giving them advice, it would definitely go along with what Kira said, but also just being their best self, whatever that self is, be that best self, be confident in what you can do, take a seat at the table, don't wait for it to be given to you, and just get out there and do it.
Awesome. Aimee.
I absolutely agree on both being genuine, there's never been a better time. And people, at one point in Cure as well, it actually becomes more about people than the job that you were hired for. And people respond to being genuine. So being yourself, following through everywhere for sure. The other thing is like really leaning in on when you see maybe a problem that nobody's thought of a solution for, and then you proactively go to your manager and say, hey, I've noticed this. I don't think anybody else is thinking about it. It doesn't even need to be within your job scope. It can be, hey, can I go, take 10% of my time and go solve this problem? Finding ways to be proactive and stand out earlier in career, you will see, will then, when it comes time for a new role, a new, promotion, will bring more opportunities your way. So be proactive, find solutions to problems that other people don't even know is a problem.
Amazing. Cindy.
All right, I will add to those, as you said, amazing points, and I love it. Just have the courage, keep the courage to be your authentic self. I think that is important. And I think a phrase that I use a lot is these days is, we are all doing life together, right? Our teammates, our colleague, our boss, our friends, we're all doing life together. And in that life, we work. We work to create value for our families. We work to create value for our companies. And we're just doing life together. So to remember that, and, we say the phrase work-life balance, but it's really about in that journey of doing life, make sure you're doing the other things too, that you find your passion in, and you keep your experiences diversified, and keep those relationships that are important to you in your life and cultivate them along the way. As we're growing in our careers, it's sometimes we get so, maybe speaking of myself, I got so focused that it became maybe more consuming. It was all good and I'm proud of it, but I let it be more consuming at times than I think I look back that I should have. So we're doing life together, and let's remember that.
I like that. I love that.